The Apple HomePod may just be underrated, but it is huge in my mind. With all these tech products being released, especially all these phones, it's just I can't wrap my mind about it all. But I have to take a step back and review something from earlier this year, and that's the Apple HomePod, Apple's very own smart speaker. The Apple HomePod is aimed at a completely different audience than the Google Home Mini or the Echo Dot 3rd generation. Those are priced at around $50. The HomePod's priced at $350. And yes, Apple did officially release the HomePod this February, and it just went to a bunch of different countries just last month, so it's still rolling out to a bunch of countries. But if you think Apple's late to the smart home game, wait until Samsung releases the Bixby speaker in the next couple months. That's going to be horrific. But we're talking about the Apple HomePod here, and I personally got my Apple HomePod with like a little sale at $300 at Best Buy. I'll leave the link to buy the Apple HomePod in the description, but you could probably get it for around $250 on eBay. And remember, you're not like carrying around the HomePod, so if it's a little used, it doesn't really matter. It's just around the sound. And talking about the sound of the HomePod, my gosh, it blows you away the first time you hear it. The HomePod only stands around 7 inches tall and 6 inches wide, so it's like generally small. But when you plug in the HomePod and play some music at around 90%, where it's like the highest quality before it distorts a little bit, blows your mind. In Apple's keynote, the whole goal with the HomePod is not to be in everyone's home. It's to be in those specific homes that love to care about music. And if you love listening to music, this HomePod makes you feel like the music is surrounding you, because the HomePod has 360-degree sound. If you want to get into the specifics, there's 7 tweeters all around which automatically adjust thanks to the A8 chip. That's right, there's an iPhone chip in this HomePod. That's why the price is so high. But with that processor inside, the HomePod maps the whole environment as soon as it's playing music. It does this in milliseconds, and as soon as it maps the environment, it starts bouncing music in different areas to the walls, right towards you, wherever you are, to get that perfect 360-degree sound. And you really hear this. The HomePod also has a very loud woofer on the top, and this is gonna get you that nice thumping bass that you just love to hear in all these hip-hop songs and these rap songs. You're really gonna feel it's like boom, boom, boom. I'm saying this right now, if you love music, this is the speaker to get. And I'm not even talking about the smart stuff of it yet. I'm also going to credit the HomePod's microphones. Even when the HomePod is putting the high quality 100% volume sound, it could still pick up, hey. Here's the section where people start injecting their criticism, and that's how Siri is inside the HomePod. And many people are critical of Siri, but honestly, over the past 3 months of me using the HomePod every single day, I truly don't use the Apple HomePod for some random questions, because how often do you have a random question? And if you do, you could always Google it on your phone. But if you do, the Apple HomePod has a good chance of answering it. It's not going to answer all the questions that Alexa or the Google Assistant can do on their respective speakers, but it can still answer some sports questions. It could set reminders, timers, the weather, all the usual stuff you may ask, it's gonna answer.
Hey, what's the Los Angeles Rams record?
The Rams are currently 7-0. That's first place in the NFC West.
Hey, what's the population of the world?
As of 2018, the population of Earth is 7,655,957,369.
And if you find yourself in the Apple ecosystem, the Apple HomePod is the only one supporting Apple Music. The Google speakers and the Amazon speakers only support Spotify. So if you get one of those speakers and you have Apple Music, that's kind of be awkward, because you're now going to have to use it over Bluetooth and not just asking the speaker by itself. Although I know many people have Spotify, Apple Music is on the rise. Every single year, Apple Music is growing faster than Spotify. And actually in the United States, there's more Apple Music subscribers than Spotify subscribers. So for the majority of the United States, the Apple HomePod supports the majority music carrier. But don't be afraid to get the Apple HomePod if you use Spotify, SoundCloud, Pandora, or any other third-party music app, because you could always use AirPlay. I mean, I listen to YouTube videos on the HomePod. Even though Apple was late to the smart speaker game, they've actually had a very underrated change to the whole smart speaker market, and this is having cloth surrounding the speaker. Let's go back into our minds here and take a look at the time before the HomePod. Do you remember the Google Home and the Amazon Echo, like the first generations of those two devices? They were surrounded by plastic. The Google Home had a little cloth on the bottom, but the Amazon Echo was completely plastic. But if you look at those generations now, it's all cloth. Take a look at the brand new Google Home Mini, which released after the Apple HomePod. That's covered in that nice, beautiful, modern cloth. Take a look at the brand new Amazon Echo 3rd generation Dot. That's all covered in that beautiful dot. So the HomePod started a trend. And what this very trendy cloth does, it makes it look modern. It makes the speaker look modern. I personally have the speaker in white. That's, of course, you've seen all these B-roll shots, but it also comes in this space gray, a more blacker color. The HomePod is overall small and compact. It's not as small as the Google Home Mini, but it's also not as large as the Google Home Max. And you have to fit those 7 tweeters in there somewhere. And I've used this word underrated a lot, but overall the HomePod is underrated. And another underrated feature or a overlooked feature of the HomePod is the touchscreen on the top. With this spherical LCD on the top, it's no Google Home Hub with a 7-inch display going edge to edge to show you full-on weather updates. It's nothing like that, but it's more minimalistic with 5 different touch controls. And the first control you have is a plus for volume up and a minus for volume down. I use these controls all the time because saying, hey, blank, turn the volume down is slower than just going right up to the speaker and just tapping it to raise the volume or tapping it to lower the volume. It's as simple as that. And not only that, you could also press a note for Siri. You could also just tap it once to play or pause. I use that a lot. You could also double tap it to skip and triple tap it to go to the previous song. And all these controls actually work if you're airplaying Spotify or YouTube and not only Apple Music. But overall, the HomePod's design is super minimalistic and it belongs in a modern home, especially if you get stereo HomePods. That looks super nice. But talking about those stereo HomePods a little more, do you remember how I said earlier in this video how the HomePod has microphones, and with that AA chip, they both combine to make a 3D environment of the sound in your house? With that type of technology found inside the HomePod, it's also going to do that with a secondary speaker, with a stereo HomePod. And then just imagine the sound quality you get out of that. 2 HomePods paired together, that would be mind-blowing. That would truly rock your house. Paying $700 for 2 HomePods is sure not for the general consumer, but if you're truly committed to your music experience, you would want to do this for sure. After you get one HomePod, it is just an endless cycle. You just want another one and maybe a couple one over here on your house. So good because the sound quality, the design, even the assistant, they all work together perfectly. If Siri on the HomePod scares you a little bit, remember Apple could always just continually update this. Apple can't change the hardware. They can't just come to your house, upgrade the tweeters or the woofer or the microphones, but they can upgrade Siri. And we've already seen a couple adjustments to the HomePod. Apple just recently added multiple timers among other things. I've yet to cover the smart home aspect of the HomePod. It's because I don't personally have any smart home appliances, but if you do, it's of course going to work with the Apple Home app. Therefore, you can control any smart home appliances on your HomePod, no problem. This is probably an aspect where it's going to be the exact same as the Google Assistant and Alexa. So the question is, at the end of the day, should you buy the Apple HomePod? For me, for the music lover out there, if it's inside of you, you are definitely going to want the Apple HomePod, especially if you're in the Apple ecosystem. But if you find yourself hard to spend $350 on a speaker and you're not inside that walled garden of the Apple ecosystem and you use Spotify over Apple Music, it is going to be hard to recommend. But if you're in the Apple ecosystem, I 100% recommend it. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. Make sure you subscribe if you haven't already, and I will see you tomorrow for the latest and greatest.